Good morning, everybody, and welcome to ASA Live. My name is Cindy Morris. I'm the Vice President of Development and Community Engagement at the American Society on Aging. And we are excited to have you join us today to talk and continue our discussion on fraud prevention. Joining me today is Aaron Archer. He is the leader of fraud risk management at Western Union. Hi, Aaron. Thank you for joining us.
Hey, Cindy. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. You know, we are having this conversation today on one specific topic, but this is part of an entire series that we have been doing with Western Union that really dives into how we can prevent fraud from really hitting older adults, but also their caretakers. And today we're going to be talking about something very specific, which is the holiday season. It can sometimes feel a little early. I mean, we all know Halloween is next week, but if you've been to any of the stores, then you also know that it is time to start thinking holiday shopping. And the holiday season is a prime time for scammers. So, Aaron, perhaps what I really want to start with is kind of overall, why is fraud prevention so important for everyone, but especially those who work with older adults?
Sure, that's a great question. So at Western Union, we obviously work hard to protect our consumers against scams and fraud, but we're also fond of saying that fraud prevention is everyone's responsibility. And so I think that when it comes to people who regularly work with older adults, they are uniquely positioned to not only spread that message of fraud awareness, but also to potentially spot red flags or indicators that someone may be at risk for being a victim, or maybe someone is even being victimized. The internet has done such a great job of connecting us over the past couple of decades, and it's been good in many ways, but it's also provided fraudsters with a powerful tool to where they can be located hundreds or thousands of miles away, even in another country, and have unique access to us in our homes. That said, fraudsters continue to exploit a lot of old tools as well, especially when it comes to older adults. The phone tends to still be very popular among fraudsters, as well as just regular snail mail, and also other things like text messages and things like that, in addition to things like social media and email.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that as I hear more and more about this, and I've learned a lot from speaking to you all over the last couple of months, I think the thing that I keep hearing the most is that this issue is not a new issue. There's just some new techniques out there. Yes. And so we want to kind of put on our stranger danger cap sometimes around that. So what happens at the holidays? What shifts at the holidays that makes this even worse?
Sure. So when we enter the holiday season, there are really a couple of scams that are always out there, but really we tend to focus on around the holidays. The first one is what we call internet purchase scams. Sometimes these are called non-delivery schemes. It's basically where you try to purchase something advertised online and then you don't get the item. So these often will use fake websites. Sometimes they'll just be designed to look very convincing. Sometimes they'll even be clones of real websites, or they may hitch a ride on other legitimate websites, online marketplaces, and things like that. These are often characterized by unconventional payment methods. So instead of having you pay for the item, through a secure website or using a credit card or something like that, they might have you pay using a money transfer, or maybe you'll have to buy a gift card and provide the information or something like that. So that's one. The other one is charity scams. So these, again, are things that happen all year long, but around the holidays especially, fraudsters will tend to prey on our goodwill. The fact that toward the end of the year, we start thinking about people who are needy, and a lot of us want to make charitable donations. We also receive a lot of solicitations for charitable donations around this time of year. So those are kind of the two big ones to think about as we enter the holiday season.
Right, and it is a really important time to give. We know that, but it probably does make it easier for those frauders to take advantage of that moment. So how do we kind of help our older adult population in this time? We know that those who commit fraud can target anyone, but we also see older adults targeted at disproportionate rates. So what are those red flags that we should be looking out for if we are a caretaker, if we are working with older adults? What are those red flags you want us to be watching out for?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. So it helps to understand that when it comes to targeting older adults, fraudsters will often leverage a couple of key principles. One is a sense of urgency. So most of these scams really involve high pressure techniques, and it can be either negative or positive. So it may be that they're telling the victim that something bad is going to happen if they don't act now. Their power is going to be shut off, or someone that they love is going to be in trouble or something like that. Or it might be positive that if they don't act now, they're not going to receive these winnings, or they're not going to get this special limited time offer or something like that. So that's one, is that high pressure sense of urgency. And then the other is what we call insulation, meaning that fraudsters really will try to isolate or insulate a victim by telling them, hey, don't tell anyone about this. And they'll give reasons for this. They might say that it has something to do with the nature of the deal, or before they go public with it. There's all kinds of reasons they might give, but the idea is don't tell anyone, keep this a secret. If someone asks, tell them this. They might maybe give them a narrative to tell someone if they ask. So with those things in mind, it really helps to kind of look for red flags that point to those things potentially happening. So for example, someone who's just receiving phone calls around the clock, they seem agitated, they seem upset when they're on the phone. Or when you maybe ask a really mundane question about, well, who is that keeps calling you? They grow agitated. Or maybe they even tell you, I'm really not supposed to say, or I'm not supposed to talk about it. People that are constantly going out to do financial transactions, they're always going out to the bank, or they're always going to send money or buy gift cards or something like that. If you're in someone's home and you're seeing receipts for financial transactions laying around, money transfer forms, receipts for gift cards and things like that. These could be indications that someone is being targeted, or that they may be actively being victimized.
I imagine that can sometimes get a little heady, right? Because so many people have been taught don't talk about money, right? And so what you're talking about is look out for these signals around money and then have a comfortable place and time to speak to somebody about it. Are there
Exactly.
any suggestions that you can give that might be how to have that conversation?
Sure. So I've kind of my experience that first off, not being judgmental in any way. So there are times where we have a pretty good idea, right, that someone is probably being victimized or they're being targeted. And so the quickest way to get someone to not want to talk to you is to pass judgment, or for them to think that you think that they're foolish or that they're stupid. So having a genuine sense of empathy, I think, just starting out, making sure that they know that you're concerned for their well-being, but you're also not questioning their judgment or their intelligence or anything like that. Um, I would say, initiating a conversation based out of real concern, and maybe not going right for asking a lot of detailed questions about the financial transactions, but just asking general questions or even presenting examples. A lot of people that I've talked to have said that they were called on the phone by someone who said that they had won something, and it turned out that it was a scam. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever had that happen? Sometimes those types of just getting the conversation started, or if they say something like, I'm really not supposed to talk about it. Presenting an example, saying, well, I talked to someone else one time that told me something really similar, and it turned out that the reason that they were told not to say that was because it was actually a scam. So sometimes starting gently, not going right for the, why are you sending these money transfers, but trying to find an end to the conversation where they can develop a comfort zone. They know that you're there to help them. You're not judging them. You don't think that they're stupid, but it would be helpful to talk about it.
Yeah, that's really good advice. I think, it probably also pertains a lot to that charitable giving piece that we were talking about before, right? Because that is a space where you really think you're doing good in the world and being taken advantage of. You know, how do scammers take advantage of the holidays specifically to commit fraud around giving donations?
Sure. So, yeah, they're really, I mean, just like you alluded to, Cindy, they're really exploiting our sense of goodwill, especially around this time of year. Uh, you know, Internet purchase scams, which I mentioned before, even provide an in for this. So, usually people are shopping not for themselves, they're trying to make their money go as far as they can so that they can get gifts for everyone. So that's one weak point. When it comes to charity and donation scams, we tend to just be bombarded. I don't know about you, but this is the time of year where I start getting all the mail pieces and the phone calls and the stuff through email from legitimate organizations.
Mhm.
And so fraudsters know that they can easily sort of slip some things in there and catch us off guard during this generous time of year where we're giving to all of these other legitimate organizations.
Yeah, and I think they often use similar names, right? So that it sounds like you think you're giving to a well-known charity, but in fact, you know, they're spelling cancer with an S, right?
Exactly.
It's just slightly off.
Exactly.
So how else can we protect ourselves and our loved ones from these scams? What are the first things that we should be doing? I know we talked about how do we communicate with them, but who do we contact? What do we do if we're a suspect of this situation?
Sure. Well, one of the things you can do if you suspect that someone is being targeted through Western Union is that you can contact us. One of the things that we can do is we can block that individual from using Western Union products and services. We call that interdiction, and we take third-party information that we receive from people like caretakers and people who are involved with older adults very, very seriously. So we can look into that situation, and if necessary, we may block that person from using Western Union. We also have a website. If you go to wu.com/fraud awareness, there are a wealth of resources there. So there's a fraud quiz that you can take to sort of test your fraud knowledge. There are, I think, 6 animated videos now that just go over very quickly and in an entertaining way the most common fraud schemes. And so these are helpful for us to watch and also to show to other people. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter at Western Union at Facebook or Woo Stop Fraud on Twitter. Yeah, there are many different ways that you can reach out to us. And again, the education and awareness piece is really key. Just routinely reminding people not to click on links that they receive in unsolicited emails, for example. With the charity scams, that's really common. Like you mentioned, the slightly fake name. Don't just click the link in the email. If you're interested in giving to that charity, open up a new browser tab, go to that charity's website and do it that way. Don't open attachments or click on links.
As I'm listening to you, probably one of the things that's ringing bells for me is that you didn't mention that we had to call the police right away. Is that something that we should do first, or kind of at what point do we notify law enforcement?
Yeah.
And we might not trust law enforcement because we know that may happen. Maybe they feel a little safer going through some of these other systems you're offering.
Sure, absolutely. And I think going to law enforcement, especially when we learn that someone is a victim of fraud, is always key.
Absolutely.
Encouraging them to go to law enforcement and file a police report. Sometimes there's hesitation, because they're embarrassed. So going through some of these other channels, reporting something online, for example, is maybe a little easier and less embarrassing than picking up the phone and filing a police report. However, it really is important, I think, to go on record, especially if fraud has occurred, to make that report, to get it on record. Sometimes law enforcement will tell you that there's nothing that they can maybe do about it. They may say that going out of the gate. Other times, you'd be surprised what they can actually do to assist and help. So that's always, especially if fraud has actually occurred, that's always a great initial first step before you then go and contact, your bank or Western Union or whoever else.
Okay, so that is the first step. I just want to clarify then. So the first step is to go ahead and notify law enforcement, and then to take that information as well when you do call your credit card company, your bank, or Western Union, so that they know that has already been reported.
Correct. And often they'll ask. So your bank, for example, will ask and say, have you already filed a police report? If you have, they may want the report number.
Excellent, excellent. So, who can we turn to for assistance? Because I think what you're alluding to here is that it can be intimidating, or you may feel foolish, or right. Who are your safe people to turn to for assistance if you do need to report something? Is it Is it best to go directly to a family member? You know, what's your recommendation? Who's our safe people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question. And I can tell you, Cindy, I've had conversations with older adults where I've been the first person that they've talked to. And I always encourage them to just talk to somebody. Usually the theme is that they have literally told no one, or perhaps, this is oftentimes too often the case, is that they have some, like an adult child maybe has found out and has even berated them or made them feel really bad about it. And so finding somebody that they can trust to just talk to about it, that can then sort of hold them accountable. So for different people, that's going to be different people in their lives. It may be an adult child, it may be another friend in their peer group. I've talked to people for whom a pastor or a caretaker or somebody like that is the person that they feel like they can go to. But that insulation that I mentioned is so key for the fraudsters. If you can just break that, many times you can sort of break that cycle of victimization.
That's exceptionally good advice, right? To look for whoever you feel safe with, right? And that's also true for the caretakers, right? Because as a caretaker, we might feel added responsibility. And so it may be even more embarrassing, or you're worried about the repercussions on you for allowing this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's important that you would find a safe person that you can talk to, be honest, and then let them help you through this process of reporting it appropriately. It sounds to me like that's probably a really good first step in this.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, Erin, thank you so much for doing this with us. It's, again, I said it's hard to believe it's already time to start thinking about the holidays, and yet it is. And so, you know, wishing everybody a happy Halloween if you celebrate that, and happy holidays if you're going to be celebrating a holiday that's dear to you this coming season. And thank you to Western Union for giving us this information so that we can share it and start preparing appropriately. So thank you very much for being a part of this with us, Erin.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay, have a good one. Bye-bye.
Bye.